Hi, my name is Andrew LaRoe, and I work with the Addison County Regional Planning Commission. And I'm excited to talk with you today a little bit about what regional planning commissions do for emergency management planning and for flood response. We are one of 11 RPCs around the state, and we act as a liaison with between the state and all the different municipalities. So we often work with town staff and volunteers to implement projects and to make sure that they're doing what they need to do to be more resilient communities. We have a number of planners in our office who work on various topics like energy planning, natural resource planning, transportation planning, community development, all of which overlap to some extent with emergency management planning. And we work together in various capacities to help out municipalities and other actors in towns to prepare for and respond to emergencies, including flooding. Overall, we do a number of different things related to emergency management planning. I'm going to define a few of them because they're a little acronym heavy. And these are in order roughly in a scale from long term to shorter term. So sort of the longer term things we do involve local hazard mitigation plans, which are done at the municipal level, local emergency management plans, or LEMPs, done annually, local liaison assistance, and technical assistance. And I will go into more detail about each of those. The hazard mitigation plans, as I mentioned, are longer term. Those are done every 5 years. The local emergency plans are done annually after town meeting. Local liaison reporting happens after major incidents when we're activated by the state and work with VEM pretty closely to report information from our municipalities to help give a snapshot of what's going on and what assistance can be provided. And then throughout the year, we work on technical assistance to town staff and employees and volunteers like EMDs or emergency management directors to provide trainings and grant assistance and other things that will increase their resilience and their capacity to respond. So to go into a little more detail, the local hazard mitigation plans are, as I mentioned, a broader 5-year plan. Their purpose is to identify different policies and actions that can be implemented over the long term to reduce risk and future losses. It helps increase the awareness of different hazards and the risks and vulnerabilities of specific municipalities. Towns and officials can identify actions they need to take for risk reduction, focus their resources on the greatest risks, communicate their priorities to the state and federal officials, as well as get feedback from their community about what they need to focus on. And they can just, in general, increase overall awareness of different hazards and risks. They typically include things like a risk assessment, a capability assessment, their mitigation strategy, and then how they plan to revisit those topics and maintain the plan over time. As you can see, there are quite a few either in progress or already completed around the state. They are on a 5-year cycle, so there are a lot to keep up with. We have several municipalities in Addison County that are currently working on theirs, and they involve a lot of community effort and rallying of staff and volunteers to provide input. And then we work pretty extensively with VEM and FEMA to get those approved. On a shorter time scale, we work with each municipality after town meeting day to update their local emergency management plan. We often start with a template, although some towns do more extensive ones. These are updated and adopted by the select board or city council each year. The points of contact that they list are kept by VEM and ourselves to reach out to towns after hazardous weather events, as well as to provide training information and grant information. And then the plans themselves include information about town resources, who the town has contracts with, how they provide public information, where they will open an emergency operations center or shelter, and then who some of their vulnerable populations or other folks that we need to be aware of are. These get updated, as I mentioned, each year, and is something that we're continually updating as we have new folks in towns. They're very helpful in identifying important locations and needs, and they frequently get used to contact officials as part of some of our other organizations, and we work hand in hand with towns to get those done. We also use them pretty extensively when we are activated for local liaison reporting. So if there are major weather events, we work with VEM as a liaison between the state and municipalities to reach out to those points of contact and collect information on roads and infrastructure damage, any damage to public infrastructure, businesses and schools. We collect information on power outages and residential damages, and depending on the event, whether the areas that were isolated or shelters opened, we pass that information along to the State Emergency Operations Center, where it can be mapped and help provide a snapshot to the state about where they need to funnel resources. And then it eventually gets used for focusing efforts to assess damage both in the region and across the state to see if there's enough for public disaster declarations, which becomes very important, as we've seen in this last year, for getting reimbursement from the state and FEMA and helping to rebuild and hopefully do that more resiliently. So that's kind of a segue into what takes up the bulk of our time throughout the year, which is working with towns and providing technical assistance. So when towns reach out or respond to some of the grant and funding requests from either ourselves or the state, we're happy to work with them. There's a number of fantastic opportunities for grants, including the Flood Resilient Communities Fund, the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, and Building Resilient Infrastructure at Communities programs. So we've got projects going on in each of those categories. We've been focusing a lot on buyouts following last year's flooding, but we also provide assistance in writing grants and administering grants. We also pass along opportunities about trainings, including EMD courses and using tools like VT Alert. And then occasionally and often through our Regional Emergency Management Committee, which is made up of volunteers from each town. We work on exercises, including things like setting up shelters, preparing for pandemic response, different trainings for communication, and it's a good way to get some of the players that are dispersed across the municipalities together to have larger scale conversations about what we can do as a county and as a state to improve resilience. So that's just a brief summary of what regional planning commissions do. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out, and we look forward to working with you. Thanks very much.